And it is. She was always a tutu kind of gal.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's so good to be with you. And I know this is what you've all been waiting for. Since I came back. I know. Since I came back, everyone's like, when are you going to talk about it? When are you going to talk about it? So, we decided, okay, we need to talk about it soon. So yeah, here we go.
Before you get stuck in the mud,
Before you get stuck in the mud. Okay, this isn't going to work, is it? We need to be closer for it to. So as I was hearing some of our kids say, like, what is Burning Man? And that was the question I had actually when I kind of first heard about Burning Man was, what is Burning Man? Because it's not a music festival. It's not camp. It is kind of, for me it felt a lot like camp for adults. But they define it as a week-long, large-scale desert event focused on community, art, self-expression, and self-reliance. So in the preparation for it, it was like a camping trip, and adult summer camp, and an art project, sort of all rolled into one. And so what Burning Man is not a festival. It's not designed for you to sit back and have something happen to you. A huge part of Burning Man is about participation. So everyone participates in creating it and building it. It's a temporary city in Black Rock Desert, but it's also, Burning Man is a whole movement, community and global cultural movement with regional events in more than 35 countries around the world. So while Black Rock City is a huge part of what Burning Man is, Burning Man also has events all around the globe throughout various times of year. And what I found is that Burning Man is a lot about what you make it and what you bring to it and want from it. So it is very much you create your own Burning Man. A lot of people would say to me, well, you're a priest, you're my Burning Man, isn't it all like sex and drugs? And I'm sure that stuff happens there. I did never see it, I wasn't a part of any of that. So there's a lot of other things happening. There's music, there's art, there's yoga, there's people doing spiritual stuff, there's people playing games. It's all over the place. So, like anything with 80,000 people involved, you can find anything you want out of Burning Man.
80,000?
So how did we get here? I know, for those of you who know anything about my husband, you might be surprised, not that he is the one who was the instigator of this. And when we were living in Nashville, he had been a couple times about 15 years ago, back when the city was more like 30,000, 35,000 people large. And he was like, I really want us to go to Burning Man. And I was like, you have to tell me about it. I was like, that sounds not fun to me. I have no interest in that whatsoever. But then we moved to San Francisco, and all of a sudden, Burning Man was a lot closer. So it's like, I could wrap my mind around driving to Burning Man. I couldn't wrap my mind around flying to Burning Man. So we were actually at the Episcopal Chef's Gala. They had a silent auction. You walk into those galas, and they immediately give you a glass of champagne on an empty stomach. And so my husband's looking at the silent auction items, and he's like, there are 2 tickets available for Burning Man. Can I bet on them? And I'm like, yeah, sure, bet on them. Drive the price up so that somebody else will get them. And then, we make more money for the chefs, the Episcopal Chef's Gala. We were the only one who bid on them. So we won those tickets. And then woke up the next morning and we're like, what do we do now? Are we going? Are we doing this? So there are actually a bunch of really good YouTube videos out there that sort of show a little bit more what it's like if you kind of grew up with that narrative or have heard that narrative, that it's like, oh, it's all sex and drugs, it's all this one thing, it's, this, that, or the other. And seeing those videos, I was like, oh, this could be really cool. And so we started working our connections with friends to see if there were camps that we could join, who we might go with, what our kind of plan, making the plan is like one of the biggest and hardest parts of Burning Man, just getting all your ducks in the row. He has really good friends who have been longtime members of what's called the Death Guild at Burning Man, and and they do, oh gosh, now I'm gonna forget what it's called. Huh? Thunderdome, yes. They run the Thunderdome every night. So if you've seen the movie at all, it is a giant geodesic dome where people strap into like bouncy things and then like hit each other with foam. But it's a whole thing, and we were like, it's a very big camp, and we were like, I don't know if that really sounds like our speed. But a friend of mine was like, if you need, I have Episcopal connections, because being Episcopalian is a little bit like being in the mafia. Like, you kind of always know, so you know you can find somebody who knows somebody who can do something for you. And it turned out that he's now retired, but the former dean of the cathedral in Sacramento, Brian Baker, had co-founded a Christian camp on the playa a few years ago called, we'll call it Religious AF, but you'll see in some of our signs that is spelled out. So we got talking with them, found some, had some interviews, said we were interested in joining. I'm a priest, this is kind of what we would bring to the playa. And they were like, yeah, come on down. So we found our camp, like, let's do it. So that was kind of how so this is our camp. We're about 23 people, all kinds of, some of us are clergy, some of us were lay people, some people were not really particularly Christian at all, but just liked our group. We were pretty, all things considered, probably a pretty tame camp on the playa. But we were older, younger, all kinds of folks involved in our camp. So I am over here on the edge with my mouth wide open. So any camp has offerings for the playa. You're contributing to the playa, you're contributing to the city as a whole. So we really saw ourselves as the Christian and kind of that type of religious presence on the playa, which, like the Bay Area at large, Burning Man is not a particularly
observant group.
There's something around the institutional religion is not like that, their jam particularly. Lots of spiritual seekers, that kind of vibe, but religion in itself, not really a thing that a lot of people are there to be attracted to. But so we had morning devotionals every morning at 9 a.m. in our chapel. That were for our camp, but also for anyone else who wanted to join us. We did something during the week called Coffee and Confession. One of our other camp members is a Lutheran pastor in Seattle and also runs a coffee shop. So he brought all of his pour-over equipment, and we made coffee. And if you know anything about coffee and pour-over, it takes a little while to make. So it was really great because we'd be making the coffee and talking to people. And sometimes it was about religion, and sometimes it was just about how's your burn going? What's on your mind? What's happening? We also some of our members offered talks on Jesus and psychedelics. Our chapel was completely full for that talk. Amazing. Yeah. It was incredible, the amount of people who wanted to talk about like the spiritual and religious aspects of psychedelics, their own experiences. And also on queer faith. We did an Ash Wednesday service at the temple. If you know anything about the temple, it's sort of the more reflective part of the playa. People often go and leave memories, or it's a place of kind of observance of people who have died, other things happening. People will go and make posters, they'll leave artifacts, and then at the end of the week, the whole thing burns. And so we actually did an Ash Wednesday service with the ashes from the previous year's temple, which was really powerful. And then we did a Friday communion service at the temple. And then in front of our camp for the whole week, we made this labyrinth, which some people used as a labyrinth and some people used as like a bike trick course. But part of the experience on the playa is like you just try something and you see if it works. And but also we had these prayer wheels in the center so people could write their prayers on a piece of ribbon tie it to the prayer wheel, and send it forth as part of our offerings. And we had, we got into a lot of people that we met on Playa who came to our morning devotionals, who came to some of our services, are Christian, are practicing Christians, and they were really fascinated in how to kind of integrate their life as a burner, how to integrate their experience at Burning Man with their Christian faith. And there was one older, I don't know how old he was, maybe an older teen boy, young 20s, and he was with his family and his mom. They came over one of the first nights, and she said he felt much better about coming to Burning Man knowing that your camp was here. That it wasn't all, everybody was going to be wild. So, and then, what is kind of life like out on the Playa? So it's a city of 80,000 people. It's kind of designed in a sort of arch shape. And you get to know your neighborhood, but it's really big. It's a big place. So you really kind of get around mostly by bike, or some people had sort of scooters or one wheels or things like that to get around. Walking in minimal amounts if you don't get too tired, and you can always ride an art car. You just hail an art car like a taxi and hop on, and where it takes you, you don't know. There's other camps also have offerings throughout the week and throughout the time, so they give the book and some of the stuff is in there. And like anything, this is kind of how I travel too. It's good to have like a little bit of a plan, and then also be open to just whatever you come across. Like I'm gonna go here, but if I see something along the way, I'm gonna do that instead. So kind of having a loose plan. Of course, the man is the big part of Burning Man, the man at the center kind of the city. The temple, as I talked about. And honestly, one of my favorite parts is all of the art in Deep Playa. So I don't know if you've been to Golden Gate Park recently, across from the skate area. They have that big no dancing sign. That was at Burning Man. The entwined display that lights up, that's been in Golden Gate Park since December or so, that was also at Burning Man. So people talk about Burning Man as being like, you kind of have two different cities, the day city and then the night city. And the night city, it's like Las Vegas, or it just, the way that it lights up, and the art, the art during the day is beautiful, and the art at night is exquisite. There was this one big sculpture that I don't think I have a picture of, but in the day it was like a dragonfly, and it had a swing underneath, this kinetic sculpture. So you'd swing on the swing, and the dragonflies flap its wings. Super cool. At night, all the wings lit up with LCDs. They had all these landscapes and swirling things going on and music playing, and everyone was just laying under it this is our God now. Just watching it was so magical and peaceful, and because it's so dark, because it's out in the middle of the desert, these are the only lights for miles and miles and miles. In fact, one night they have a Black Rock City observatory with a giant telescope. Somewhat unfortunately, it was a full moon week, so we saw the moon really, really clearly, not necessarily able to see a lot of the stars because the moon was so bright.
What is this? Oh yeah, what is that?
So this is one of the art installations.
Wow.
I'm trying to remember what this one was called. But it was similar to kind of the temple. You could go in, and then at the end they actually did burn this one also. So they kind of built it with a plan to burn it.
So they had to haul all this stuff to build that.
I honestly do not know how people do it. They do it. But yes, they haul everything. Comes to the playa, everything, most crucially, everything gets taken away from the playa. Because one of our principles is leave no trace. So our camp every morning and every evening did a move sweep, matter out of place, which a couple people would line up and just sweep the whole camp looking for anything, because part of the deal with the federal government on using this space is that they do leave it move free as possible. The mud this year made that extremely, extremely challenging. All of the restoration crew that comes in after the event is over, had to work really, really hard just because outside the porta potties was a giant mess, just toilet paper baked into the mud and everything. It was awful. But so the 10 principles of Burning Man, which I find very relevant to kind of some of the work that we're doing, especially around vital and thriving. Radical inclusion, which sort of means that like, however people show up, that's who they are, they're included. I think there are ways that Burning Man is really expensive, so how inclusive is it? So we're always working on how can it be more inclusive. Gifting. You'll hear people say that Burning Man is a barter culture. It's not. It is a gifting commodity. It's a gifting economy. So bartering means you trade. Gifting just means that it's given to you, which is that's hard. I don't know about you. It's hard to receive gifts and not have something to give back. But part of the city is sort of like you trust that it sort of comes back around. If something is given to you, you can give something to someone else, and it all kind of happens in that way. Radical self-reliance, which I preached on a little bit a few months ago, just that you can't blame anyone for your own experience. Like you have to take responsibility for your own emotions, your own preparation. Of course, there is a lot of people to rely on, but a lot of it is, your own, taking responsibility for your own burn. And radical self-expression. This is, as you can see, I'm wearing my tutu, my light-up tutu today as part of my radical self-expression for our time here. Tuesdays at Burning Man are known as Tutu Tuesdays, so you might see a lot of people wearing tutus on Tuesday. But this also means, there's quite a bit of nudity at Burning Man as part of people's radical self-expression. And it's, not, I guess I was surprised by it because that's not something that I seek out often. But it's not sexual, it's just people feeling free and wanting to, not wear clothes in that environment. Our camp had a rule that there was no, below the waist nudity while we were in camp, because we are mostly, we have institutional church connections, and that's, you don't want your boss or whatever, that kind of thing. Communal effort, it really is about everybody coming together to make this thing happen, and it requires every single person, and I think that really reminds me a lot of the church. Like it happens because we all contribute to making it happen. Civic responsibility, just like being a good citizen. And participation, a huge, huge, huge principle of Burning Man. Like you must participate. There are a lot of people who say to me, oh, well, I would love to go to Burning Man, but I just want to watch. I just want to observe. That's not what Burning Man is. And I get it, we all are tired in a lot of ways, but that participation, that's where you have skin in the game. You're there to do it. You're there to explore. And immediacy, again, that kind of feeling of oh, here, this thing looks interesting, or that person looks fascinating and I want to talk to them. If you follow that principle of immediacy, then it means you never know what you can't say oh, I'll come back later, because that thing might be gone completely. And even the art, the art goes away, the man burns, the temple burns. There is a sense of that it is temporary, and so we enjoy it while we have it. Immediacy also reminds me a lot of just the work of the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit takes you where it wills and puts people in front of you, and you can kind of take that invitation or you can ignore it. And I think for me, that principle of immediacy is say yes, say yes to that invitation. You never know where that might take you or who you might meet or what kind of conversation you might have by saying yes to that. I think I also talked about this in a sermon, the immediacy part, not having a cell phone. makes that so much easier, because it's not like, well, okay, I'm looking at my phone while, parade goes by me, or whatever. A lot of people do have their phones on the playa just for taking pictures or video or whatever, but I never really found signal, even when I wanted to find signal, when we were trying to make plans to stay a little bit longer than we had planned, because of that immediacy. It's so nice to just kind of leave that behind. And I came back and I was talking to my husband. I said, I really enjoyed not having my phone at Burning Man, or not having it be functional, except for basically as a camera. And I really want to try and do that more, because I don't know about any of you, but I will literally be watching a TV show and on my phone, and I'm like, I don't want to be like that. And he was like, well, take it a little bit easy on yourself. Like, you also have obligations in the real world that we didn't necessarily have at Burning Man. So it's a struggle of how to kind of integrate these into our personal lives.
Well, I would imagine that the immediacy increases participation.
Yes.
That those two are kind of connected.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and kind of, saying like opting in to things.
Saying yes.
Saying yes. I think that also, I saw that play out so much in a sense of play, which I don't see adults in the default world often opt into.
Yeah.
And that I think is so important, but that sense of play, again, radical inclusion, so you're not going to get made fun of if there's just an openness. So I've been thinking a lot about kind of this, our vital and thriving process, how it kind of matches up with all of this. And again, that question of sort of how do we practice our Christian faith? How do we live and be as Christians in a sort of spiritually open but post-Christian space? And our camp has developed over several years of being very, very thoughtful about how we are as Christians in this space. And one of them is that we actually don't use any Roman crosses, because that is a symbol to a lot of people that is very isolating. If they're coming out of a background of religious or church trauma, they see that and kind of immediately, ugh. But what was funny was that we were right across from a camp called Grilled Jesus. There were a bunch of lapsed Mormons, and all of their stuff was all this traditional religious imagery, but with cheese involved. So so it's so funny that we're like, we're not going to use any of this kind of imagery, and then right across the way was all of this imagery, but in a kind of with a twist to it. This is part of our vital and thriving part that we're doing right now. We're really looking for people of peace. So if you dwelled with us at all through that Luke 10 scripture, where the 75 are sent out 2 by 2, and if you go into a place and you say, peace be upon you, they welcome you, you stay. If they reject your peace, you go on your way. And there were a lot of people of peace at Burning Man. And that kind of makes me think, okay, well then, where are the people of peace in the Grand Playa and the default world? Because they're certainly out there. There are a lot of people of peace even in our own camp. People who don't identify as Christian, don't particularly, feel attracted to the church or any kind of an institutional religion, but liked being around us, wanted to support our mission. Some of them were our husbands. My husband, one of the other women, her husband's was he set up our kitchen, he arranged all of our dinners. So that was a lot of that. What do these people have to teach us? How do we partner with them in the world? And then again, a lot of the focus on our vital and thriving is how do we be hosted? How do we be the recipients of hospitality? And that is shot through kind of the Burning Man experience. There was always a trepidation I felt when I was going into somebody's camp. And most of the time they're like, no, come in, have a drink, have a this, have a snack. How that experience of being hosted was really, really a lovely experience. And then that kind of embracing the 10 principles, which I find very, very cohesive and, they match with the work of the Holy Spirit so much in ways that are challenging and require kind of getting outside of our comfort zone in exciting and also sort of scary ways. And then always that partnering with others. I didn't end up happening because of the rain, but like our camp was approached by the Jewish camp on Playa, and they said, could you help come have us, do a Shabbat dinner with us? And it unfortunately didn't end up happening, but that invitation of like, there are other people on Playa, there's a gospel choir, can somebody from your group come and preach? So there's all this kind of interwoven stuff where our missions overlap and align. So this was our chapel. As you can see, again, there's religious imagery, but not sort of traditional crosses, icons, kinds of things. It's very more loose, but we would have an altar in the center, and then people would just kind of come, bring chairs or not bring chairs. We had some sort of seating, and that was where we had our morning devotionals and some of our talks. And then the rains came. So, on the left, or your right, is our kitchen after the rains. So it got pretty swamped. And then that was on the left there, sort of our living area, and then you can see all of our tents in the background.
Looks so slippery.
Yeah. So the rain began about Friday afternoon, and it ended up going all through the night. Saturday was drier, but very, very muddy, and the trial and error in terms of figuring out the best way to walk around was epic. Trash bags under the shoes, trash bags under the socks, and like a whole thing. So the man burn that was supposed to happen Saturday got postponed. Sunday morning we started tear down of our camp about in the morning, and then it started raining again in the afternoon, and then the man burn and the temple burn got postponed. Monday, fortunately, we had a beautiful day, bright sun, and the tear down was just really, really hard because everything was muddy. So we put everything out in the sun to dry it, brush all the mud off, then pack it up. And then we had man burn that evening. So Michael and I ended up leaving early Tuesday morning. Exodus took, I think for us to get to the road, it took us about 3 or 4 hours, which is actually better than the year before when there wasn't mud. So Exodus is just always a hard thing to getting out is challenging. But we had a wonderful time at our rainbows today. And one of our Friday evening, the rain stopped for a bit, and we had this beautiful double rainbow. And we were like, it's a promise that God's covenant that it's never going to rain again. And it started raining immediately again. But it was so just, again, that kind of immediacy. Everybody saw that and was told about it and came out of their shells wherever they've been sheltering from the rain to enjoy the rainbows. Everybody was kind of going around our street and our camp. I think with any community, when you know how strong the community is when the shit hits the fan.
Right.
And
Sure.
and the shit hit the fan, and there were some people that had maybe spent money on other things rather than food, but a lot of us had extra food. So we kind of, there was a sharing, a kind of camaraderie, especially with the camps nearby, that we kind of shared what we had. There was one camp full of these guys that they had been one of the big camps that a lot of people had gone to, but they had brought a lot of booze, and so they were just like, we've got another keg of beer, we've got and just trying to get people to come and hang out. We're gonna make soup later, it was just a real. Another camp was showing. It was kind of a science camp. They were showing sci-fi movies, so it was a great thing to do, when we couldn't really be out and about. So our neighbors really made kind of all the difference when it got gross and bad. But this kind of, this picture sort of sums it up to me. It looks like a mess, and yet there was so much beauty and so much joy in it. So That's all.
Alright.
We got about 3 minutes for questions.
Are you planning to go back?
That is one of the questions that people ask me a lot, and I would say yes, but not this year.
Did someone say the ashes from last year, or were they still there? That's probably done.
Oh, I don't know how the ashes,
It's interesting.
were gotten. I wasn't part of that planning, but.
Well, I'm wondering if there's any correlation between the number of principles and the number of commandments.
Oh, well, I mean, we call it Exodus. There's a lot of like
Yeah.
Christian imagery shot through, or biblical imagery shot through the principles. I mean, of course, many of you living in this area probably know about how Burning Man got its start, but as it got bigger, they were kind of like, okay, the principles were organic. It didn't start with like, we're creating this thing with these rules. Burning Man sort of started, and then they're like, okay, what are the principles of this community and movement?
How did they set the things on fire?
I do not know. I mean, they actually clear everything out about 12 hours beforehand so that they can arrange it. But the man burn is not only a man burn. It's not only lighting the thing on fire. It's like fireworks. It's a whole thing.
Yeah,
Wow.
like, how did they set a match or like?
There is a whole group of
Okay.
the pyro squad. They arrange all of that.
Flaming torches.
Wasn't the original one VIP?
Yeah. The first.
Saw people on a Friday night that could read this outside.
Yeah.
Isn't that something?
So that leads me to the next question, which is, did the Ten Commandments grow organically out of people trying to figure out how to live in community with each other in the same way that those 10 principles grew?
Yeah, I mean,
Do we
there's a
know
lot of
anything
sort
about
of
the
like,
history of that?
I mean, there's a lot of sociology of religion, that could that addresses sort of things like that. I mean, you can look at a lot of the Levitical laws and be like, some of these are just common sense food safety laws when you're living in a world without refrigeration,
Right.
like shellfish.
Yeah.
That's not gonna go well.
Or with
You know?
trichinosis and,
Yeah.
Do you stay in touch with any of the people that you met?
Oh yeah. Especially there's a number of people in the area. I was at a fundraiser for something and somebody was like, "Hey, wasn't I at Burning Man with you?" And I was like, "Yeah, we look a little different now that we're clean, right?"
Thank you.
Well, thank you all so much. I look forward to talking with you more about this. Oh, you're welcome.